Yeah, this is the place where you might expect to hear an intro to the episode. But we have a lot of unfinished business to do, and I think, I say we just get right into it. All those in favor. All right, the ayes have it. Here we go. Welcome to episode 32 of Solo Q, or perhaps I should say 31 Part B, but I'm going to go with 32 because I want to keep the numbers going up. Welcome back. It is good to have you back here in the Solo Q for the second half of this, what has turned into a very large topic, the exploration of my WoW family. The first half of the episode was pretty well received from the feedback I heard. That's fantastic to hear. This has been a topic that was kind of important for me, and I was willing to do it even if it was a little less important to the listeners. But lo and behold, I've heard some pretty positive feedback from some people. Just appreciating the topic, interested in learning some of the stories. Some people had some very specific feedback. For those of you who also listen to Azeroth United, Denethor, thank you. As I said, lost for words, my friend. I'm super grateful for you sharing that story, and I am proud to be your friend and your brother in this case. And I can't wait to see you at Blizzcon. So you never know when you start sharing stories. You never know what connections you're going to make with people. And I guess that was kind of what I was hoping for in putting this out there, that I would hear some unexpected things and some connections with all of you. So fantastic. We're going to continue in this episode. Of course, I have more to tell, including the big profile that I've been cranking up to. I did want to give one small correction. I was thinking about when I was talking about the story of the Snake of Vol'dun and how he and I came to become friends, and he had reached out to me as a listener and as a supporter of the show, and we got talking, and he mentioned his passion for the Sethrak, and thinking back on it, it was me who encouraged him to come on the show. I thought, hey, come on and talk about this passion, and so that's how, as I think I even said, I'm not sure how we got to there, but upon reflection, I got there. I remembered something. I'm very proud of myself. I guess as the show's hitting 2 years, it'll be 2 years in December from the first episode, 2 years since, this month, since I've been working on the show. I'm getting kind of nostalgic, I guess, a little bit. And it's been a fun trip down memory lane with all of this. It's also been horribly frustrating. I expected, when I put that episode out, I would turn around and continue to record. And wouldn't you know it, basically most of the last 2 weeks, I have been absolutely suffering from I guess I'd have to call it a throat cold. Absolutely hammered by coughing and just gunk in my throat, and it's been bizarre. It has led to many sleepless nights, and basically from the coughing, it has taken a small truckload of various medications to get me even to where I am now, which is kind of back to a not great normal. since July, I've had this weird, I don't know, I'm no doctor, slight infection in my throat where if I talk for too long, my voice goes downhill and I start coughing. So I've been dealing with that. Then this hits on top of that, and holy cow, it was very frustrating because I've been really looking forward to this second half, and day after day, night after night, I couldn't get through the day. I couldn't get through teaching. It was pretty miserable. So glad to be back on the microphone, following up with the second half of my WoW family. Looking ahead, we are, last couple episodes of the year. How did we even get here? Here I am planning into 2026. Kind of incredible. In the coming episodes, we're gonna wrap up the year. We're gonna look to a new year. I've got a couple interviews coming up with some of the aforementioned members of the Solo Q family. And so I'm really excited about that. And then we'll be on to a new year. This is going to be, year number 3, season number 3. The world's our oyster, right? So lots of things really exciting. And now that we're vaguely healthy, I've only coughed once so far. Not a great sign since we're like 5 minutes in, but hey, that's what editing's for. You won't hear a thing. All right, let's get into a brief kind of combination of news and what I've been up to. It's mostly kind of things I've been up to before we dive back into the family.
And what have you done lately?
Well, without a doubt, the biggest thing that I've been up to lately is that I did acquire Blizzcon tickets. Huzzah, hooray for me. I'm very excited. This year seemed like the right time. I can swing it. I can devote some time to this. I'm going to make a go of it. And I'm super excited. I'm not one for big, huge crowds, but this does seem like something you got to see in life at least once. So I'm very excited to be heading to Anaheim in September 2026. I already know various content creators who will be there. That is super exciting. I also want to know if you are going to be there. Let me know. We're going to find a way to make some more connections because I don't want to just go hang out with tens of thousands of random people. That, as you know, is not my thing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to meeting some people, seeing some people again, and seeing what it's all about. Feeling that excitement of BlizzCon. Feeling that I think there's going to be some big announcements this year. I think there's going to be some energy in the crowd. So there you go. One of the interesting things about the ticket buying process, and I mention this for a reason, when you go through the Tixer ticket selling app company thing, you go to their website, tixer.com. That's how I got the tickets for the 30th anniversary. That's how I got the tickets for BlizzCon. Same company. As part of the process, at least for BlizzCon, they wanted to immediately attach my ticket to my Battle.net account so that Blizzard knows that my Battle.net account has tickets to BlizzCon. Isn't that really, really interesting? Like, really interesting? If it's not, hold on. Let me go to the second item in our kind of news, kind of what I've been up to roundup. On last Tuesday, the beta launched, the beta from midnight. And all of those people with beta access are in the game testing things out. That means not my favorite time of year because it means being really super careful with social media and dodging all the spoilers. And I will say, so far, I haven't seen anything that I didn't want to see. I think, I've been pretty good about scrolling somewhat quickly when things feel like they might be midnight content. But the expansion is still 3 months away. I'm pretty sure we're looking at January pre-patch, February launch. Man alive, there's just so much that people are posting online. And not only that, there's so much emotion tied to it. So many people are way up about Midnight, then way down about this feature and the cost of this, and this needs to change. And it's like, holy cow. I really need to, that's almost worse than the spoilers, like the ride of it all, the emotion of it all. I don't care. I want to take even that emotional ride in a couple months. And I appreciate that people are doing beta and giving feedback. I hope they're actually giving feedback, not just shouting on social media about it. As I've said before, I don't have a lot of interest in beta. I want to test the things out. Not only is it not what I want to do, I don't have time for it. I don't have time to play the game in live enough as much as I want to. Never mind, spend it in beta. The only thing I would do is I would look around in housing for a beta. That I would check out. There's no spoilers there. There's, getting just a hint of the system that's going to be coming, and then, just having, I don't want to say a leg up, because it's not a leg up, but I would be ready for what's coming, hopefully in December. And I would check out housing with the beta access that I absolutely did purchase by buying a collector's edition, which, if you remember, the collector's edition is the Epic Edition plus all sorts of physical stuff. And the Epic Edition does have beta access, but I don't have beta access because I don't have an access code that says, hey, congratulations, you bought the Epic Edition. Because when I bought the collector's edition, a third-party website that is not Blizzard, kind of like Tixer, I was never connected to my Battle.net account, unlike the BlizzCon ticket. So the BlizzCon ticket did connect a third-party website to my Battle.net account. This kind of drives me crazy that it's not the same thing for buying the actual game. I have bought the actual game. Now, beta access, whatever. Take it or leave it. I don't care. It's not why I bought either the Epic or the Collector's Edition. But when 11.2.7 comes in December, I am going to want to have access to housing. And the only way I'm going to have access to housing is if my Collector's Edition is recognized. So please, please, please. I have no idea who listens to this show. I have no idea. I hope somebody at Blizzard enjoys this little thing. They found it by accident and they're listening and enjoying it. And I have no idea if those people have any ability to influence this, but this is a huge thing. I really don't want to buy a second Epic Edition just to get it refunded when the Collector's Edition code comes in. I don't want to do that with my $90 plus tax. So please, hopefully, anyway, all right, enough of that. I'm so grumpy about that. I don't want to be grumpy about that. Other things. Legion Remix. I have been in a little bit. I've done a little bit. I'm edging towards something. Still not into the crazy town, as I was talking about last episode, but I'm up over close to 700,000 bronze. So, I don't know. My goal originally was if I want all the mounts, it's like 2.2 million, I think, for what I need. Maybe, right around there. I do anticipate getting in there, but I don't know. We'll see. I will say, going through some of the questing, some of the cinematics kind of hit hard. Watching, spoilers, Varian dies, by the way. Watching Varian's death, that one hit me harder than anticipated. I, of course, have seen it. I knew it was coming, but it had been a while. Many times I start a character, run through Legion for leveling. I skip the intros because, I've done them. I don't need to do that again. And so I realized it's actually been a long time since I watched that whole cinematic. Same thing with Vol'jin. Watching Vol'jin's scene, that one was like, oof, oh yeah. And of course, the one that gets me every single time is The Death of Ysera. Yeah, that one, and I have seen that numerous times, although I do often skip it because it's sad. But this time watching it, it gave me an idea. Watching Ysera rise up into the night sky to join a loon made me think it would be really cool if you could do a freeze frame image of her rising up into the sky, and that like screenshot sort of thing, that frozen image, is something that you could put in a painting on the walls of your house. Like if there were a way to take in-game images and turn them into paintings on the wall of my house as decor, that would be amazing. Like pick your scenes from various cinematics or what have you. That would be pretty outstanding. No idea what would be involved in making that happen. Imagine it's not nothing. And I don't think you would open it up to any JPEG because that would be, hard to police. Maybe it's a curated library of 200 images from various scenes and stories in the game. That would be pretty amazing. So just an idea for you, free of charge, to that one Blizzard employee who's like, guys, I work in accounting. I can't help you with any of this. Hey, the next thing up is kind of news, kind of something I've done, but only kind of. It is the 21st anniversary of the World of Warcraft.
How you doing, man?
21st anniversary event.
I got a bad feeling.
I said this might happen. I said it kind of as a joke, but I said it might happen. That maybe after 20, when we did 10 whole weeks of anniversary, maybe I am anniversaried out. And I said that, and I kind of laughed, because as if I'd be anniversaried out. That's silly. I do this every year. I've done it for years. Not just a couple of years of the podcast. This is like a holiday for me. I, first of all, didn't get in on the opening day. On the second day, I thought, okay, all right, what's my strategy? Who am I gonna get in there? Who am I gonna my level 4? Start with my level 40s. And I opened up one level 40, and of course, they came into the game and were standing right in front of historian lore.
Oi.
Asking the questions because they had not been in the game in an entire year. And so I was like, let's continue where we left off. And I clicked, and it asked me a question. I think it was, what was the thing that, which artifact basically opened up the Shadowlands, and I answered it, and that was it. And I looked around, and I logged out. And I did not open up another character. And I think I'm okay with that. I haven't done one since. I've answered exactly one question. And I don't know. The thought of logging in and doing that this year is not appealing. Part of it's the time, and I always say, the time is nothing. You can run 20 characters in 15 minutes, and it's not a big deal. And even that, like somehow time has been weirdly crunched, even with being sick and all this stuff going on. And this year it's not going to happen. Was it 10 weeks last year, or was it 7? I have in my notes it might have been 7 weeks. But anyway, I think this, whatever it was, the excessive celebration last year, they have, kind of done it for me. And part of it is, I don't mind playing the game. And that's always been a thing. Like, I can get all these levels really quick, and that's nice, but it comes at the expense of, I don't get to then actually play those characters through some things. And, if it's getting an army ready for a certain level and certain content, then that's great, but I kind of have that. I have so many level 70s, it's not even funny. I think I'm over 46 or something. So the rush to get more characters up to 70 is not there. And so what's the best use of my time? it actually, as fun as I usually have, it's not going through the anniversary event this year. So I went in, I did buy the suit, the thing that everyone seems to be complaining about, the transmog. Do I like it? I don't know. Looks fine. It's not something I'm probably going to wear. Don't really need to complain about it. It's free. It's a thing. I already got all the tier 2 stuff from last year. So yeah, I am sitting this one out. This year, not going to do some anniversary stuff. You guys let me know if there are new questions. You let me know what fun I'm missing. But yeah, there you go.
Let's get down to business.
Before we jump into the raid of the month, I have one little family-related story that is notable because it really did point out what I am missing as a solo player. And it's also appropriate because it ends up being a story about the newest member of my WoW family. Earlier this month, I carved a few minutes out of a busy day and hopped into the game. I was doing some research for the show, working on that profile, but I needed a bit of a break. I wanted something light and quick, nothing that would grab me for 20 or 30 minutes at a time, even a delve. And the answer was hitting some world quests in Koresh, probably for the weekly choose one meta quest is my guess. And as I was flying near Ecodome Primus, is Primus the big one with the bubble and that's where all the ecological succession stuff is? It's that one. Anyway, when I was flying there, my rare scanner showed an elite was up just outside of the dome. So I pulled in for a closer look. There was no scrum of players, there was no elite mob. Nothing out of the ordinary seemed to be going on. There was a bunch of those armored digging things that were attacking stuff near the dome, but that seemed kind of normal. And then I remembered, it kind of hit me. This is the boss that doesn't arrive until you kill a bunch of stuff. So I thought, all right, I started killing a bunch of those diggy things. And as soon as I killed one, a progress bar appeared and slowly filled up. When it got to the end, the actual rare showed up. I think it was listed as a level 82 plus or something like that. It didn't feel like the sort of thing I should solo. So I waited. Big mob on the map. Players will show up, I figured. And I waited. And I waited. Nothing for a few minutes. My impatience kind of got the better of me. And I figured, all right, I'm a paladin. I have armor and bubbles and shields and things. What the heck? Maybe I can just do this myself. So my hammer flew, and I started in on this rare that I didn't even know its name. I didn't know what it dropped for cool stuff. I just thought, oh, there's a rare. I should go do it. Well, that didn't really work. The level 82 plus whatever, it didn't one-shot me, but it definitely ground me down a lot quicker than my shield cooldowns were going to hold up. And after slogging through and seeing his health bar only slide a few percent, I was dead. So, yay. And after returning, I started waiting again. I posted the coordinates in the chat, and I did a /who to see that, there were in fact plenty of players in the zone who could help. I do know that at this point in the patch cycle, most people have moved beyond whatever these zone rares are, but, I figured somebody had to come. And eventually one player did. And sometimes, when that happens, it's those players that sort of arrive, they immediately pull and go crazy. But this was not the case this time. At this point, we're both waiting. And after another few minutes, the player, a hunter, suggested that we could actually do it, just the two of us. Her pet would hold threat, and we could burn it down. It seemed like a plan, so we started. It was a bit of a slog, but after lots of dodging mechanics and kind of persistent damage, we did it. Yay, I picked up whatever there was. I don't even remember what the loot was. And I was looking at my map, wondering what else I should do when the hunter asked if I needed any of the others. I had no idea what she was talking about. She explained that there are 4 of these devourer invasions that launched every half hour or so. After a while, I realized that, okay, I had actually experienced 3 of these 4, but I had no idea there was any sort of connection. And it turns out, and some of you may know this, of course, it turns out that for each one that you kill in a week, you receive a devoured energy pod. Of course, a devoured energy pod. But you can only get 4 of those per week. You get 1 for killing each of these 4 rares, and then you have to wait until weekly reset to earn any more. And after collecting 20 of them, you earn the Translocated Gorger, a pretty badass looking ground mount, actually. The hunter said she only needed 1 more for the week, but the rotation of the 4 was kind of wonky and she wasn't sure which one would drop next. She asked if I wanted to help out with the next one, and, I figured, well, I'm just kind of dinking around, doing a little research on the side. Why not? So I sent a group invite and told her I was on board for the ride. I could camp out and look for rares and, keep doing my research kind of in the interim. During the wait, we chatted in the group chat, slowly getting to know each other a bit. Turns out she often plays with her husband. She kind of goes through all the leveling with him, but once getting through all the basic content, he kind of takes a break. He does jump into dungeons with her, but activities like sitting in Koresh for a couple hours, waiting for rares, that was not his jam. The nice thing about a 30-minute spawn time is that we could both walk away for a bit. So at some point, Tilly, my dog, needed her nightly walk, which I trimmed down just a bit to ensure I was back on time, but we had the ability to go out and do that. By the end, we had flown across the zone many times trying to determine which one of the 3 would pop next. We did miss the one that spawns next to Tazavesh once, so we had to wait for that to come around again. Apparently that one often goes down pretty quickly. She had her 1 more energy pod for the week, bringing her to 18, and I had 4 more to add to the 8 that I never knew I had that were sitting in my war bank. And at the end of all that, I had a new friend in my friends list. Since this late night adventure, I've not been in-game all that much, and we haven't run into each other since, but I am sure we will at some point. Even though, as I said last episode, I do struggle to stay in touch with people. How often is enough? What is the expectation in this situation? These may seem like silly questions to people who are more social, but they are questions that dance on my mind because it is not my inclination to look at my friends list and see who I could reach out to. It's just not a thing I do. I often leave these things to chance. And so I send a big thanks to this hunter who reached out and showed me something in-game that I never knew and spent a couple hours waiting with me to get the rest of my devourer invasions. That was super cool of her. So first coup with some keys and case and camping with the hunter. If it seems like I'm getting less solo with every one of these stories, well, just wait until this next segment. Well, this is a first for the solo queue. The raid of the month, where I normally look back on various raid content and how suitable it is for farming, how fun it is there a cool story, give you my impressions of that. For the first time in the solo queue, we are going to turn our attention to current content. And the raid of the month this month is Manaforge Omega. That's right. So when I was planning out this episode, I did have this idea of hey, let me leverage some of my growing WoW family to try and get some experiences that I haven't had. I haven't had the people to do it with, and now I'm starting to have the people to do it with, and that's really exciting. And I always knew that, okay, time walking dungeons, not so bad. Regular dungeons, okay, a little bit tougher. Mythic Plus dungeons, might be a bridge too far, I don't know. But raids always seemed really out of the question. Really out of the question. How am I going to get in with a group? How are we going to organize all those people? How am I going to get my experience and my skill level and my item level up to a reasonable level to participate in this content? That is an investment in time that, regardless of being solo or not, I'm not sure I have. So I had an offer. A friend, actually a family member, creative, he reached out and said, hey, I'd love to haul you through some LFRs if you'd like. He's a relatively he's a very experienced player. He's also an experienced healer. He said, I'll focus on healing you. We'll hop into LFR, pair up. I'll heal you and just get you through some LFR raids. And I thought, oh, that's great. Experienced player in my WoW family because he's in my actual family and, part of that chosen family. And I thought, that's cool. Threw it in my back pocket, excited. But here's the thing. He has many interests and many different game interests. And the way he plays WoW, he kind of ducks in and out new content. He's in there, he's jamming, he's, dungeons and raiding and getting the stuff. And then he's gone. Like he's in and out and off doing other stuff and then back again when new content. And by the time that I was ready, like, okay, all right, we're getting close to this episode. Looks like I might be able to get into the, those myth keys with those Mythic Plus keys with Coup, and things are kind of coming together. Looking in my BattleNet launcher, and creative hasn't been online for a month. And so, as much as I know that the offer is genuine, part of me, and frankly, it's the shy part of me, is like, I can't reach out and pull him back in to do a thing and whatever. No, I'm asking too much. I don't know. I'm gonna figure it out. So I didn't. Not that long after, actually, when I was on the Lion's Pride Tavern podcast, if you listen to that episode, you heard the main host, Fafford, make a very gracious offer, and I think he made it 3 times. So, it's one thing to say, hey, come and raid with us sometime, and we all just go, yep, okay, and we move on. But he said it numerous times, and he really drove the point home that their raid group is very inclusive. They are friendly. They are low expectations, meaning, I shouldn't say low expectations. I think they have high expectations. They just go about it in a relatively stress-free way. We don't blame, we don't point fingers, we don't get mad at each other. We're pretty easygoing. And so you say that enough times and you're gracious when you say it, and I had to try and take them up on that. I thought, okay, maybe this is my path. And Fafford said very nicely, hey, offer's open, come run with us. Check in with my wife, who is essentially, I guess, the raid leader, raid organizer, what have you. And I thought, okay, yeah, this is great. Well, I reached out, and that's where stuff got real. Right? That's where stuff got real. The invite's very nice, but what kind of content are you doing? Oh, well, I'd love to just join some normal. That'd be fantastic. And at the time, if I remember right, they were raiding, progging in heroic, but then sometimes coming back to normal, they hit a point, hit a wall, whatever. Okay, let's drop back down to normal, mess around. And the way it was put to me was, hey, hang around. And when we do that, we'll bring you in. We'll bring you in on the normal. I thought, okay, all right, Friday night. Here we go. I'm getting ready. And I'm just going to be available in case, so I'm in game. I'm kind of not doing too much, sitting there with my eye level, gear level 685 at the time, I want to say. And even the raid leader was like, it's a little low. It's a little low for what we're doing, but hopefully we can get you into normal. Well, Friday night came, and I waited patiently. And then at some point I got a message that said, oh, hey, we just killed this boss and we're going to keep progressing. Doesn't look like we're going to make it to normal tonight. Sorry. It's like, okay, hey, no problem. Who am I to be asking for anything? And I thought, all right, that's the karma. That's the universe saying, okay, that was a good try to try and hop into a raid. But, you got to earn your way in here, and you can't just cheat your way in. You can't just shortcut your way in. That said, hey, I did a few things in game, and I'm moving that eye level up a little bit. And I was ready to make this podcast about raiding that, much as I tried, it's just too much. It's just too far. This little solo player who, doesn't have the time and doesn't necessarily have the interest to get into everybody's stuff, it's not going to happen. And then following Friday night, I was online. I was not really paying a lot of attention, kind of forgot. I was busy. That was the night that Case reached out and dragged me through all the many things that I died through, but it was a lot of fun. And then out of the blue, I get a message from the raid leader saying, hey, how's your eye level this week? And I, sheepishly was like, oh, it's, I think I was 692 at that point. It's like, it's 692. She's like, still a little low, but why don't you just not mention that and we'll send you an invite. And immediately I was like, okay, what do I do? Oh my God. I'm like the firefighter and the bell went off, but I never finished firefighter school. And I'm just standing there like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? So I don't know, I cleared out a little bag space. I stood around Dornegal and then boop, there's a group invite popped on me in game. I'm like, and I almost didn't click it. I was like, But I thought, nope, let's try it. And so I flew my butt out to the Manaforge Omega, the starting area. Stood there, didn't know anyone. It was like the first day of school when you go to a new school and you don't really know anyone. And the group gathered. We had 21 players hop into the heroic raid, starting right from Friday night, starting with the first boss, the Plexus Sentinel. And before I really had time to be as nervous as I probably should have been, we were in there. And what I'm pretty sure nobody knew is that at that moment, I was stepping into a current content raid for the first time ever. I've never been in a current content raid. I'm pretty sure maybe something dragged me into something in Legion. I don't think so. But I'm pretty sure this is the first moments I've ever been in a raid. I was nervous, and I still don't think I was as nervous as I should have been. My first thoughts were interesting. Once we get down to business, actually, even before fighting, like right from the start, it was interesting how precise everybody is. Calling for this, calling for that. Do the buffs, do the food, do the potions, this, that. Everything's calm, and even once the fight starts, it's fascinating how calm. Do this. Now go here. Drop that here. Everything was clear. Everything was precise. Everything was calm, which was really cool. I didn't know what 75% of the stuff that they're saying was. But, I'm going with it. I'm catching some of it. And somehow, all the while, I have So the actual raid leader in the game is calling things and doing sort of the comms. But the woman that I was working with, the organizer, she just kept sending me, hey, in this fight, we're going to do this, and that. Don't do this, don't do that. And, frankly, in the middle of running around, killing trash, going from place to place, starting up a fight, I have no idea how she was able to just give me this nice narrative of what to do. And sadly, on the fly, most of it made no sense. Like, okay, circles, great thing over there. What? Yep. Got it. I did a lot of dying. Luckily, they were pretty skilled. Our 20 other intrepid heroes, they knew what they were doing. We, fought through the Plexus Sentinel. There's a bunch of mechanics. I survived 2 things, and then the third one just killed me. Something about a soak. I don't even know what that means. There was a countdown, and then all of a sudden I died. And frankly, I looked up at the units, and I thought, oh, look, someone else is dead. And it was Fafford. And I was very happy because I remember him saying that, oh, yeah, he's usually the one to die first. So I was in good company. And there we go. And as we moved on, I tried to hold my own. I tried to fight things and tried not to get into too much get in the way and get in the way of things that were going to beat the crap out of me and reveal that I was secretly the lowest eye level or lowest gear level player in the entire group. Did a few mechanics, interesting. At first, the thing would pop up to say, hey, roll on this loot thing. And I'd be like, no, I don't deserve anything. I'm not there for the loot. I'm not there to take anything away from anybody whatsoever. I mean, this is a gift to me. I'm not going to get in the way. After a few bosses, one of the messages I got from the raid organizer will say, she said, feel free to roll on stuff if you need it. Like, just hop in there. And so once we got to something that was vaguely plate, because I'm playing a paladin at the time, I was like, okay. And I ended up getting a weapon. I got a Hero Track 701 weapon, and maybe I'm crazy, but I put it on and instantly I was like, oh, I actually feel more powerful. I think I had a 690 sword or something. So it was definitely a nice upgrade. Another thing I was amazed by this first time in something that a bunch of you probably do and you're not amazed by, so I apologize, but how you can see so many things going on. And I think the raid leader, the tank that is kind of running the show, calling shots, calling for things, hey, watch out for this, hey, here comes there were a few times that I died where the last thing I heard somebody say was essentially, don't do that, or get out of the way, or, something, watch that beam, and realize, oh, they actually saw what I was doing before I even knew what I was doing. They were clearly telling me to watch out for something that I was already not really sure what was going on. And just the ability to see so much. And I know from other parts of my life that, hey, the more you do a thing, the more aware you are. I'm just standing there looking at my character and trying to anticipate anything. I'm not seeing anything else. I'm not seeing anybody else. I'm seeing giant things that want to kill me, lines and swirlies and circles, and I'm trying to not be in any of those. Or then I am trying to be in them, and I have to decide which ones I am supposed to be and which ones I'm not. So, yeah, I'm amazed at how much is going on and how much some people can see and direct. And some of the postmortems after we would wipe, like, oh, well, I know that this happened, and you did that, and it probably is this. I'm like, what? How are you seeing all of that and still doing a rotation and doing movement and doing, all the stuff? It is fascinating. And I was very impressed by that. I think on that first night, it all came to a head with the Fractilis fight. And we had wiped a couple times. There was a lot going on. There was a couple times in the raid that I didn't, everybody dies. And a button comes up and says, hey, do you want to release? I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize that. I've died in the game before. Sure. And then I'm somewhere and I'm like, wait, where's everybody else? I don't get it. Why am I the only one here? So I run back to where the fight is, and okay. And that happened a couple times. I started to realize, yes, somebody's gonna like mass resurrect or whatever that is. And great. Well, there was another time and I thought somebody said, oh, we need to release or something. I'm not sure of all the lingo. So I thought, okay, I know there's a resurrect thing, but they said release. I guess I'll click release on the Fractilis fight. Where you release to is a good ways away. And so hop on my mount. I'm running, I'm traveling, and trying to get back as quick because I can hear them already gearing up. Like, okay, yep, let's get ready. Yep, we're gonna do another pull, and half paying attention, and I aggro a mob. It's this giant like burrowing whatever. I don't even remember what they're called, but this giant burrowing thing, and I'm like, I can't fight that. That's clearly gonna be. That's going to kill me again. I just got killed and now I'm going to get killed again. No, I just got to keep running. and as that thing was chasing me, I had the question in my head of, is that going to go all the way back to the boss? And I pretended to myself that I didn't know the answer. And the shy, naive noob me was dreaming like, oh no, I should be good. And about a third of the way into the fight, I, again, focused on my character and whatever, don't get slammed into the wall or I don't know what I'm doing. I heard somebody on the comms ask where this giant ad came from, which this is a fight where there were no ads. And I was like, kind of looking at my shoes, like, I'm sorry, group. I'm really sorry. That was my bad. But it just made me kind of laugh because someone just genuinely was like, wait, where did this come from? What is this? That one's on me, everyone. But I learned a couple things. I learned what soaking was. With the Fractilis fight, I started to figure out this whole lane thing, and in our last pull, I executed moving the thing into a couple lanes, and then luckily, fate did not call on me again, and the boss health fell steadily down to 0, and we did it. And our 2 hours, it was right at the 2 hour mark, and our 2 hour session was over. And not only had I completed my first raid at current content ever, but I was at 6 of 8 heroic. Like I don't even understand. 6 of 8 heroic. And I'd love to say I'm proud. I'm not. I'm thankful. I'm thankful that people who were 6 of 8 heroic carried me through 6 bosses. And so that was really exciting. And then in the Discord shortly, a link to Warcraft logs gets popped in. And I thought, whoa, okay. I don't even know what I'm looking at in Warcraft logs. There's a lot there. I think if you look in my column, there's not a lot there. I guess these are parses. I don't really know what any of that means, but I know I don't do a lot of damage, but I did maybe get 2 green numbers on Soul Hunters and Fractilis. So I don't know. Maybe I did okay on those. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but hey, I'm pretty happy. And so that's Friday night, and the group raid's Fridays and Saturdays. So I kind of made sure I was online on Saturday night on the off chance that they wanted to take me under their wings again. And on Saturday night, there was only 17 players. Only 17 players available to prog. And prog is a word that I now have experienced. So there you go. So only 17 to fight Salad Bar Man or whatever. Nexus King Saladar. And we spent 2 hours kind of whacking around with King Saladar. There were a lot of mechanics. There was a lot of dying for me. I mean, I guess ultimately there was a lot of dying for all of us, but I think I died 15 times. That is more deaths than we had pulls, because they were a couple times generous enough or maybe foolish enough to waste a couple of B-reses on me. And we made good progress. We got down to a 20% wipe. So, a ways to go. And then after we were done, I thought, wait, we only had 17 people. Like, isn't that fight designed for 20? And so I know the scaling happens, but I don't think the scaling goes down below 20. And so, 16 and a half characters, which, with me, I'm the half. I think we did okay. And I think the group was happy. We made some progress. It was a little bit depressing to know that you were the reason for something happening. Like, there were times that I died that, okay, it didn't matter. They went on fighting for another 3, 4, 5 minutes and something else wiped the raid. But there were a couple times when whatever I did led to something else. And, as patient as they are, when you die and you immediately hear someone say, oh, that's not good, you're like, oh, crap. And like 2 minutes later, if that, like 30 seconds later, everyone's dead. You're like, oh, I started a chain reaction that wasn't good. And the people who know stuff, they knew it right away. Like, oh, that's not good. Like, oh, shucks. I was hoping you guys wouldn't notice that I died to that thing for like a third time in a row. And they did. Patient people. I am grateful for patient people. That is for sure. In the end, hey, like I said, I was 6 of 8. I filled my top row of my vault, which I have never touched before. So since the last time I had a show, I have dipped into the Mythic Plus track of the vault and the Raid track of the vault, both for the first time. I pulled a 704 ring out of the vault to get my final, get rid of my final blue item. So that was a great improvement. My gear level is 697. I've now seen all the bosses in the raid because I did do Dementius in story mode, and I've been to the salad bar. I just have not defeated it. So I've seen all 8 bosses, and again, that's not a thing I've ever done in 10 years of playing the game. Which to me, boy, now more than ever, I think story mode has to take you through the whole story of the raid tier. I just do. I don't know why that's even negotiable. I don't know why it's debatable. I don't understand. Or just give us follower raids. Come on. Because I liked it. It's not, it's not the thing that I'm going to do. I'm not going to do this every week. That said, I'm 6 of 8. And I guess I would like to see 8 of 8 just to complete the whole thing and get there. I don't know if it'll happen, but I think that would be pretty neat. But I think lower level players, solo players, non-group players, whatever it is, I think they should have access to the whole raid. So if anything, this really did double my conviction for this different raid tier to allow people to have some tourist mode through the story. And what would a raid of the month be without a verdict from me on the raid of the month? Well, it's certainly a little bit different this time. I was not paying a ton of attention to the raid itself, or certainly what was on offer. This was not farming content for me for sure. But I really did like the raid and the bosses, like the flow of it all. I think it was interesting. I do think that in current content, it does feel a little formulaic though. Trash mob, trash mob, trash mob, get to the next boss area. Sometimes you set up the food and the potions and you wait and everyone cinches up their gear and preps while the boss waits patiently for you to say that you are ready. I guess maybe there's some chivalry in raiding. Kind of feels a little bit like Inigo Montoya waiting for the dread pirate Roberts to catch his breath after climbing up the cliffs of insanity. Like, no, take your time. I want you at your best when you come and try and take my myth track shoulders and my hero gear, polearm, whatever. So I don't know, there's that. I guess I want a little bit more fluidity and a little more reaction and I don't know. Anyway, I'm not sure that I'll do this again for other raid tiers. Certainly probably not at the heroic level. So we'll see. So I would like to get in there and finish off the last couple bosses just for, the completion of it for that. I do look forward to, in a few years from now when one of my many current level 70s has jumped up to 90 and comes back here to stomp through and collect all the Mog. I think that's going to be fun. I think that's going to be fun for sure. Manaforge Omega gets an early thumbs up for me. And we'll give a different thumbs up for rating eventually. But good stuff. And again, thanks to the raid group connected to the Lion's Pride Tavern. I am absolutely grateful for all of you rolling your eyes quietly at your keyboards while I go off and stand in another stupid thing. And I'm thankful for you guys pulling me along and letting me have a pretty cool experience.
Tell me a story.
An old memory of a beloved friend. Let us hope it has wisdom to impart.
We have arrived at the pinnacle of the journey through my family. I was trying to decide on which music to play with this story, and it was tough. I was debating and trying to be logical about it, and in a quiet moment, my brain just started humming the music from Vashir. And I knew it was the right decision. The tone, the mood, all of it. So the story will begin in Vashir, before shifting a little bit. There are two final members of my WoW family that I want to highlight today, and both of them are relatives. A number of years ago, I believe it was 2017, I was at my aunt's house. I remember a map on the wall caught my eye. Now, I have been a lover of maps ever since I was a little kid, but this one was different. It was the original map of Azeroth. Before the Central Sea filled in with all the islands, it turns out that my aunt had played World of Warcraft, but had given it up for various reasons. I think this is when I found out that her brother, my Uncle Norm, was also a WoW player. She is the sister of my mother, closest to my Uncle Norm in age, but he was quite a few years younger than his sisters. In fact, my Uncle Norm was only 9 years older than me. Now, stay with me for a minute, because I promise that I'm going to come back to WoW, but I need to describe to you my uncle to put it all into context. The thing that brought me close to my uncle early in life was when he started taking me fishing, one of his passions in life. At the time, he was a child of the 70s, a bit of a hellion, driving fast, smoking cigarettes, and Lord knows what else. He was clearly, even as a kid, I remember this was apparent to me, he was clearly told to be on his best behavior with me. When we started, I was about 11 or 12, so he was 20 or 21. By that time, I think he'd already crashed muscle cars and whatever, and He was driving a beater Ford Escort, but he still had that thin mustache, cigarette on the lip, leather jacket vibe that was the height of 1970s cool. It was Norm that introduced me to heavy metal. I specifically remember hearing Iron Maiden's album Somewhere in Time for the first time in that Ford Escort, along with Mechanical Resonance, the debut album of a band called Tesla. That was the summer of 1987. Norm was a huge fan of Kiss, AC/DC, Gwar, King Diamond, and many other heavy bands, all on vinyl at home, except, of course, those albums that we were cranking in the Ford Escort's cassette deck. But I only saw a slice of him from a certain perspective. To my parents, he was a younger, lovable but crass troublemaker, living a bit fast and reckless. Later in life, he remained very blue-collar and very blue of language, often swearing up a storm. He worked manual labor, including factory jobs, diving in the cold Atlantic Ocean for sea urchins, and that quintessential Maine profession, the lobsterman. I think when I first started fishing with him as a kid, he was working as a grave digger at a nearby cemetery. That seemed like the most outrageous job possible for my young brain. I wonder if he ever thought about that job when he was playing his undead Destro Warlock, one of his main characters. In his fun time, he was a goalie for a men's league ice hockey team and loved nothing more than taking his small fishing boat onto one of southern Maine's many lakes or ponds and fishing for some bass. He never grew tired of fishing. As I headed into high school and later college, I had no time, or made no time, for fishing trips, and my uncle and I were reduced to only seeing each other at holidays. I will admit it was an odd transition getting to know him as an adult and seeing him in a very different light. At some point in his 40s, he had a fateful day. On a rainy winter afternoon, he came across a car that had hit a patch of ice and slid off the road. Having both a desire to be helpful and the 110% confidence that all Jeep owners have, he pulled over to help them get back on the road. In the process, another car hit the same patch of ice and slid off the road at the same place. Unable to get out of the way, except to try and jump up, he suffered terrible injuries to his legs. Bones were shattered and later reconstructed, but the result was that my Uncle Norm was essentially disabled and in constant pain for the rest of his years. I began playing WoW at the end of 2015 and only picked up steam with Legion's launch in 2016. After my aunt mentioned that Norm played WoW, I must have found a way to connect with him online. My Battle.net list says that we added each other as friends in-game on August 4th, 2017. Norm was one of my earliest Battle.net friends. As a solo introvert, however, I didn't reach out to him to play together. I'm sure the fact that we were on different servers felt like a good excuse in my own head. At that time, I had not seen my uncle for a couple of years, even at holidays. I was busy with life, whatever that means. He was living an increasingly secluded life, rarely leaving his apartment and trying to find ways to live with his pain. In September of 2018, my uncle had a massive heart attack while driving, and when his car slowly came to a rest without harming anyone else, he had already passed away. He was only 53. Truly, the emotion I felt most was mercy, for he had suffered so much in the years since that bad accident. After my uncle's death, my aunt convinced Blizzard to allow her to take control of his Battle.net account. And so there, he still sits in my friends list. His now empty account is permanently grayed out and says he has been offline for 5+ years, the point at which my aunt transferred his WoW account to her own for safekeeping. In the last couple of years, I had the vague idea of trying to get into his account to look around and learn something about Norm's WoW life that I never knew. I didn't know what I would find. I didn't even know what I was looking for. How do you even begin a forensic investigation into a WoW account that has been inactive for 7 years? Well, I am at heart a numbers and spreadsheet kind of guy, so when in doubt, create a spreadsheet. The first step was to compile a full roster of his 31 characters. The plan was to log into each character and see what there was to find: classes, races, levels. Where are those characters? What are their achievements? Does he have any fantastic mounts or Mog sets? Can I get any sense of what his Warcraft adventures looked like? Heck, I didn't even know what faction he played. If anyone was going to roar a deep-throated "for the Horde," it was going to be my rugged, bearded, tattooed uncle. And after all of that logging in, poking around, and taking notes, what does my spreadsheet tell me? A lot, actually. The first character I logged into was a human unholy death knight, originally named Norg.
Make it quick.
I guess it's kind of like a combination of Morg and Norm. After my aunt took over, she changed the name to Norg Angel. In that first login, it feels appropriate that the first music to play is the slow, kind of understated Stormwind music. The first thing I notice is that his character has a yellow star icon above his head, like one of the raid markers. This WoW looks very different from mine, as it is running no add-ons and has the original WoW UI, something I do not see very often. I stripped things down from my normal add-ons to focus in on what his world would have looked like. My Elf UI setup is more modern and lacks any of the WoW styling and the character portrait. And that is when I had my first swallow hard moment. If I use the original UI myself, this might not have hit me in the same way, but since Norg Angel was sitting in a rested area, there were little animated Z's rising from his portrait. It took me right back to the death of Dumbledore in the Harry Potter universe. After his passing, Dumbledore appeared in his portrait, but was still sleeping. The animated Z's rising from the portrait seemed appropriate as I was diving into Norm's characters for the first time. I hopped onto a second character, Gogar Norm, an orc arms warrior.
For the Horde!
I clicked open the statistics page and looked around for anything that would give me some insights. 275 dungeons entered, 33 raids entered, 84,000 gold acquired, 253,555, the most gold, total gold owned, 1,288 flight paths taken, 392 hearths, 11,134 honorable kills, 70,338 creatures killed, 2,107 total deaths. The numbers that make up a character's life. Interesting, but still not a ton of context. I logged on to a third character named Sepatura, an orc beast mastery hunter, who is clearly a pet battler with lots of stats and achievements in that category. Now, I know my uncle. Sepatura sounds very similar to Sepultura, the Brazilian heavy metal band. I don't think that was a coincidence. There's Malox, a human fury warrior. Among his achievements, he is 97% of the way to 100,000 honorable kills. Now, I don't know a lot about PvP stats, but I just checked on my main. And in 10 years of playing, I have exactly 385. So I feel like 97,000 honorable kills in the time this character played seems like a pretty legit achievement. What do all these characters say about him? Well, here's some overall stats on race and class, roles, and servers. Of his 31 characters, 28 of them are DPS. 1 tank, 2 healers. There are 14 Alliance, 17 Horde. As far as classes go, 8 Hunters. Hunter was the most played. 6 Warriors, 3 Druids, 3 Paladins, and then at least 1 of every other class. Of the 36 total specs, at least at the time he played, he had 18 of the specs covered. So in some ways, he is a fellow altaholic with maybe not a completionist attitude, but certainly covering a lot of areas of the game. As far as races, Blood Elves were the most popular with 8. Night Elves were second with 6. And then 3 of each: Dwarf, Human, Orc, and Tauren. There were no Trolls, no Draenei, no Norms, no Gnomes, or any of the allied races. I think if he had been around, I think he would have really dug Magar Orcs. All told, those 31 characters were on 4 servers, 2 main servers and 2 smaller ones. He had 14 tunes on Azure Mist and 10 tunes on Staghelm, and each had a mix of Horde and Alliance. On Daggerspine, he had just 6 tunes, 2 Horde and 4 Alliance, and there was 1 single Alliance tune on Rune Totem. So clearly he had friend groups on both factions, which is interesting. If I had had to guess ahead of time, I would have said Norm would have had 1 Alliance character for every 10 Horde, but not so. Much more balanced. Of course, since Norm's account went dormant, there has been a level squish in WoW. Today, these 31 characters have earned a total of 815 levels. But I pulled up the squish details, and going through and reversing those, it turns out that his 2 highest level characters were at 110, the Legion max. Another 9 would be at level 100, and the 31 characters together had earned 2,000 levels. As far as time played, if you added up all the characters, his total /played was 335 days. Now, I don't know exactly when Norm started playing. It might have been 2010. It could have been as late as 2012. It could have been earlier. It's hard for me to tell. So those 335 days are over the course of at least 7 or 8 years, possibly more. Hard to tell. I could tell, however, that there was some information that was inaccurate or incomplete or just confused. I think with the transfer of the account into my aunt's BattleNet account and the whole warband functionality, achievements and stats have been squished together, and there's definitely some strange stuff that happened. I noticed that my uncle had only 46 mounts in his collection, and that might be true, but it does seem a little low. It could be right, but I did notice one of the characters, when I logged in, was actually mounted, but it was mounted on a mount that was not actually in his collection. Definitely something odd going on there. What do I feel moving through a familiar place while in his characters? This is a question I wrote down initially, but as I logged into all of these characters, I got the sense that it didn't seem right to move them or to start running them around through content as if they were mine. They felt sacred. That just didn't feel right. In fact, I felt like each of them were in a sacred place, not meant to be touched. Most of the characters were dutifully standing near mailboxes. Most of the Horde were standing in the Valley of Wisdom in Orgrimmar. And most of the Alliance were in a couple different locations around Stormwind. A few were still at the Shrine of Two Moons in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms, and a couple more were in their Horde garrisons. I can tell you one big difference in how Norm played the game from me, and that is he was not a solo player. He was in 5 different guilds with those 31 characters. On Rune Totem, where he had just that one Alliance tune, he was in the Don't Be Jaten, Jaten guild. I don't know what that means. He only had the one tune, but he was the guild master of that guild. On Daggerspine, he was in a guild called Nec Sorte Nec Fato, which is a Latin translation of neither by fate nor by chance. Interesting, maybe not as profound as it might sound, but interesting. Only the GM of that guild is still kind of active and was active about a month ago, and all the others are years inactive. Norm had at least one character there. On Azure Mist, he was in the Dragons and Things Guild. He had 3 tunes there. In this one, he was a member but not an officer. He had 8 tunes in the Behemoth Guild, which was on Azure Mist and or Staghelm, hard to tell. It's on both. He was the GM and the vice GM among other officers. It seems like this was kind of his big push for a guild. The guild message still says, "Welcome to Behemoth. We are a new guild. Thanks for helping us grow." And of the 11 characters, 8 of them were my uncles. And none of the other characters have been on in the last couple of years. And the last one was actually 2 guilds, the Outcast Guild and its alt guild, Cast Legacy or Dark Wolf. I saw it referred to in both ways. This was the largest guild, with literally hundreds of characters still listed in the roster. He had 5 characters in the guild and then 2 in the alt guild. This guild is, just like the others, essentially dead, except it had 2 members that are still active. And they have numerous characters, but out of those 472 characters, most of them are long since not logged into the game. So this was his roster of characters, but what was Norm in-game? He was a guild leader. He was well known in some circles, in those 5 different guilds with various levels of involvement. Hard to tell much about those guilds, even the small ones, because rosters could be misleading for size. Certainly in the 7 years since his passing, plenty of characters could have left those guilds for other places. I've heard secondhand from my mother and my aunt that, and clearly they heard this from him, that he was a very aggressive player, which makes sense given his personality, but he was also very loyal. He would do anything to support his friends, defend his guildmates. He was supposedly a big PvPer in some circles and was quick to right wrongs and come to the aid of his friends. So all this information, how do I come to some conclusions about my uncle in game? One question that I had was, about the idea of living on inside the game after his life came to an end. And as I poked around, I did actually find some hints of my uncle. I mentioned the Outcast Guild, and I mentioned that it's still slightly active. There are 2 players who are still playing. I believe they might be married. And then I think other characters kind of jump in and out every now and then. I noticed that the guild had a Discord server, and I hopped in on their Discord server, and it clearly has not been touched in years. I think the last little meme thing was from 2022. But in the list of channels, I did notice one of the voice channels was called Norm's Nook. I did hop in, but yeah, there was no one there to talk with. Certainly not Norm. And I mentioned that Outcast still had some life to it. And when I was looking in the game, I looked at the guild chat and noticed people had been by recently. And as I scrolled through, it seemed like people would show up every now and then, check in. And I found that as recently as August of this year, 2025, somebody had mentioned Norm in the guild chat. 7 years later, since his passing, somebody asked about him, something to that effect. So I was very excited. I in the chat, hopped in, I explained my situation, and reached out. And I did get a couple comments from those 2 active members who did remember Norm vividly. I did not end up connecting with them in any more detail for various reasons, but sounds like he was as memorable in-game as he was in real life. One of them said he was a very good friend. The other said he was nuts, which fits, but that he kept the guild together. And then kind of said, without him, well, ... And as I said, of the 472 characters, there's only 2 members still active, so seems like Norm was the glue that held things together for them. I can tell you one more effect that Norm has had in-game, and oddly enough, the effect was on me. In logging into his account on my computer, it somehow grabbed a couple aspects of the UI and carried them over to mine. And this is even on different characters and different computers. My character name is now listed over my head, and the yellow star ping marker that I mentioned is there as well. I've never done either of those things. I always figured, oh, I know who I am. Why do I need my own name on the screen? And I've never used a raid marker on myself to see myself, although I kind of like it. And I have to tell you, I won't be changing either of those things. Like, I know it sounds silly, but it really does feel like an acknowledgement from him in some weird way. And hey, besides, I cannot think of a good tech reason for why this one setting, or I guess these 2 settings, the name and the star, inside the game client would persist into my version of the game. Sure, it's all the same data, but why the change? And why didn't it change back? And why not other changes? Working in IT, I have certainly learned that sometimes you do not dig too deeply. You just accept some things as the magic of the universe, and you go with it. I never played Warcraft with Norm. For 1 year, I saw his name and a location in game. At that time, I had no idea the game would come to mean so much to me. And I also had no idea that I had such a narrow window of time in which I could play with him. Instead, we ran parallel to each other. zeros and ones on different physical servers, never crossing paths. And that was true in life as well. I didn't see Norm for the last few years of his life. In talking to my aunt about this, she mentioned that she got my uncle into Warcraft. She had played for a number of years, and while she kind of comes and goes from the game, she thought that it would be good for him, that it would help distract him, that he was struggling so much mentally, that getting him in the game, getting him social would help him. And I think it probably did. In the last years of his life, he essentially was a shut-in. He was not getting out, mostly for reasons of mobility and pain. But in-game, he could still be there. He could still be there for his friends. He could still have friends. He was a different person in-game. And I think that was important to my aunt. You know, at times, my uncle had even talked about suicide, and having watched his struggles and his pain, understandably, like, it was rough going for a lot of years. And so I think a huge thank you to my aunt, my goodness, for probably extending his life and probably bringing some joy and happiness in, at least in some aspects of my uncle's life, where in others there was none. Timing of it all was interesting. The Battle for Azeroth launched on August 13th, 2018. My uncle died on September 10th, 2018. A month later, less than a month later. I can't tell if he actually got into much BFA content, but I do know that there's evidence of him being in the game on September 6th and September 7th, hitting some various Legion achievements. It really looked like he was in kind of finishing up some Legion achieves before heading into that next expansion. And so as late as 3 days before his death, and possibly even sooner, he was still playing World of Warcraft. I obviously can't tell all the stories of 31 characters, and frankly, it's not a lot of conclusions I can draw beyond what I've told you, but I did decide to take one of his characters and to take him on one final quest with me. And I want to just kind of finish with telling you about that. This character's name was Deekcha, Deekcha, which is a name I'm not going to like saying a bunch of times because it sounds weird, but Deekcha used to be a level 90 dwarf.
Great to meet you.
Beast Mastery Hunter, now has been squished to level 35. Deekcha is a handsome, mid-length red beard, mustache that just exceeds that beard in length, stout young dwarf. Because he hasn't been in game forever, he actually had no talent, so I gave him the starter build of the 26 points just to give him some talents. Not that we were going to do too much, hopefully not use them, but Deekcha totes a gun and has two pets, Smelly Cat, a saber-toothed cat, and boy, if that name comes from the song on Friends, I will be shocked knowing my uncle, but who knows. And a bear named Mary Ginny, which seems a little bit more on par. At 53 and a half days played, this was my uncle's second most played character. And it has the Warlords Draenor intro quest in his log, clearly from when Norm was playing. Now there's also the Dragonflight intro quest, which is kind of automatically there given his current low level. Deekcha is a gatherer, my favorite way to play the game. He has Pandaren mining and skinning both maxed out, which means he looks like he's ready to head into WoD. Not sure if I don't think he ever did, so I don't know. I suppose that's why he is, or was left at level 90. So I'm not sure what he looked like as far as gear originally. I realized that he was treated to a gear upgrade, and so all of his level 39 gear is generically dwarfy. So hard to tell what he was originally wearing. In his bags, the first thing I see are not 1 or 2, but 7 recipes for gingerbread cookies. So I'm going to say that Wintervale was one of the more recent activities for this dwarf. There are some potions, a few things to eat, 3 different types of bullets. I don't remember when bullets were being made. Maybe during MOP, I'm not sure. And some savory deviant delights and a lot of empty bag space, seemingly ready for diving into a new adventure. I forgot what the deviant delights did, and the text just says eat me, so I did. And then my uncle's dwarf looked like a human pirate, so I kind of that lasted about 3 minutes before I clicked it off. We walked out of Ironforge, where he was dutifully waiting by the mailbox, right next to the inn. We walked out to the front gates and stopped kind of on the overlook to look over a snowy Dun Moreau. Every now and then, each pet would stretch and let out its own growl. We are on a mission, and maybe it's a final one, but that's not important. We hop on his snowy griffin, fly south from the heights of Ironforge, following the road down the hill pretty closely. I turned off dynamic flying, mostly because I don't like it, but also he would have never used it. I look around in Karanos, the village at the foot of Ironforge, for a few minutes before we took to the skies again, still headed southward. Blackrock Mountain appears on the horizon to the left, but our destination is to the right, closer to the coast. As I cross the water and the brief moment of fatigue, the outlines of a city begin to appear in the distance, and I wonder when the last time this character visited Stormwind was. As we hit land, the music changed to catch the slow melody of Elwyn Forest as we approached the city from the mountains near Stormwind Keep. I paused on a hill overlooking the water and that little island of portals to all Cataclysm locations. I paused to keep the quiet music playing a little longer before the energy of the Stormwind music comes crashing in. But I also want to look at the city. Oddly, I want this dwarf to look at the city. Does he notice any differences? The colored roofs give away the different quarters of the city, but I know that my destination, my reason for coming to Stormwind, has no roofs. As we take light and sail into the city, I have my answer. Deekcha is discovering the various quarters of Stormwind for the first time, so this is a new experience for him. Most of my uncle's Alliance characters are hanging out near a mailbox in the Dwarven district, but this one has never been here. We land in front of the auction house in the center of the city and begin to walk around the square. It is nearly empty except for NPCs. Thomas Miller walks by, barking out freshly baked bread for sale as he tries to sell his goods. A Stormwind Griffin rider descends right next to us to speak with the captain of the Stormwind Guard, Melrus Maligan, at his station next to the Hero's Call board. After a salute, he returns to patrol the skies above. Strangely enough, I am not sure I have ever seen this happen in-game. And I've spent a lot of time in Stormwind in this very square, but I'm not sure I've ever seen that. The level 59 Mechanome Arms Warrior checking out the board is only the second player I've seen in the city. It is quiet here on the Azure Mist server for whatever reason, and that seems perfect for this mission. Time to click the button to switch from running to walking. As we begin to leave the area, I realize that in examining all of these characters, I did not dive into their banks. And so we turn and follow Officer Brady up the steps to the Stormwind counting house. Only 21 slots of his bank have been filled. 2 pets that may never get learned, a Siamese cat in a cat carrier, and a mana wormling. There is a carrot on a stick, a trinket that increases mount speed by 3%, but only for characters below level 49. There are 5 Netherguard bitters, a potent alcoholic drink. There are 4 sprigs of preserved holly, another sign of the recent Wintervale fun. And there are 5 coins of ancestry, left over from a lunar festival of years gone by. It seems fitting that I am here honoring my own elder. Back on our way, we walk past the Gilded Rose, the popular inn next to the auction house. We turn left, over the bridge, past the enchanting shop. Next, we pass the entrance to the Stockades, the one dungeon I ran with my friend at the start of my Warcraft career. Not sure I've done it since, maybe once. Diksha is certainly surprised when fireworks go off and the goods of the trading post are spread out everywhere. I resist the urge to click on the glowing treasure chest to grab 500 tenders. It doesn't feel right. As I continue walking, I'm lost in the minor moral debate of grabbing the tenders when the city opens up in front of us. The buildings are now behind us, and Diksha, Smelly Cat, and Mary Ginny are standing on the brick overlook at Lion's Rest. This is the destination. As abruptly as the area opens up, the music changes to the Canticle of Sacrifice, a somber piece of music with the underlaying of quiet bagpipes. The last time my Uncle Norm was in Azeroth, King Varian had already perished, and it turns out that this memorial had already been constructed. Certainly Norm had come here at some point, perhaps to grieve the fallen king. From this spot, we stand overlooking a half circle of crafted waterfall that flows into a hedged circular garden. You can walk in the 4 cardinal directions, and there is a 3-layer water fountain at the center. From the center, walking the path to the west towards the open ocean, of course, takes you through a stone arch towards the tomb of King Varian Wrynn. As we pass under the arch, the music changes again to the song with the subtle chorus oohing over muted music. I know what comes later in this piece of music. We press on, walking down the path of stone laid at a 45-degree angle. At the 2 lamps, we stop. There are 2 Stormwind city guards standing at the ready, staring straight ahead through the slits in their plate helms, ready for anyone who might come to desecrate this sacred area. Diksha takes a knee here at the foot of the tomb, where a stone likeness of King Wrynn lies in repose. We are here to pay our respects to the fallen. Diksha comes to honor the king. I come for a different man. My Uncle Norm inhabited this world, even coexisted in this world with me, and I never managed to find him here. In fact, I didn't see my uncle in the real world in those last years of his life in Azeroth or in this life. I never thanked him for the great moments of my childhood, for the lasting passion for heavy metal music, for my appreciation of what he was doing as a 20-year-old hellion, taking a 12-year-old kid under his wing, something I could only appreciate as an adult. I never had or found the chance to thank him for that. Maybe I did say something before he slipped into his own small world, but it doesn't feel like enough. I suppose that is how it is with the people we love who leave too soon. We could say everything 10 times more than needed in life, and once they pass, it will always feel like it was not enough. Of course, no amount of thanks and praise and gratitude can stop the cycle of life. The breaking down of our physical bodies, especially before we reach that promise of our elderly years, cannot be defied by mere words and feelings. In some ways, it feels like Azeroth was a bit of hospice for my uncle, while his body used up the last ounces of energy that it had for this difficult life. Not going to lie, after I typed /Neil into the chat and that dwarf took a knee, memories began to flood back into my brain and I cried. I was not expecting that. I did not know what I was looking for when I began this exploration. It turns out that when I guided this digital character to this pixel construct designed as a war memorial, I realized what I was looking for. It was not to be found in the 2 hunter pets or the achievements or his /played. It was not found rummaging through his bags or compiling lots of information into a spreadsheet. What I found was what I needed. It turns out that what I needed was a quiet place to sift through my favorite memories of my uncle. I'll tip my hat to the Blizzard crew for building the setting and the crafting of this beautiful music. But the thing I found at the end of my many hours of investigation, spread out over 2 months, was my uncle himself. Nothing hidden, nothing magical, nothing that could change his life or his death. Don't let anyone tell you video games are only frivolous or a waste of time. A good game can give you back the energy that you put into it. It can help you process emotions, connect with people, share experiences, or tuck yourself away from the tougher parts of real life when you need to. I think that my aunt is right that Norm was hiding away here in Azeroth. And I think this is the place that I will come to when I want to remember him. If I have the timing right, I choose to think that my uncle passed away in the final moments of the battle against the Legion. He died serving both factions. He died trying to help those others even when he couldn't help himself and did not want to burden others with his needs or his care. He was gruff, he was rude, and nothing even close to subtle. He was also a doting father, usually a good son, and as a young man, the most giving uncle that I had. I choose to think that his name is listed here in this memorial to the dead who gave their lives for the greater good against the Legion. I think he's up there. I move Diksha to the end of the blue carpet, and I give the fallen king a final salute. The lighthouse sweeps across the horizon as the evening light collapses into the horizon, and the bell tolls 9 p.m. It is time for this dwarf to return to Ironforge, possibly for the last time. I wonder if Diksha misses my uncle. I like to think that he does. And just like that, even RP walking seems too fast for this moment. Heading up the stairs, the tomb now at our backs. On the lighter side, as we walk, each of the hunter pets have to crawl up and walk along the succession of benches on either side of me. As always, our pets bring levity and a smile in tough moments. On the way out, you can talk briefly with NPC Otan Tenno. I do not know if he has a specific story or was involved in earlier eras of the game, but when you click on him, his simple text dialogue says, "My city is ready to begin healing. I am ready to begin healing." That feels like a good message. If you look up the few lyrics to the music here, the Canticle of Sacrifice, you will find that they are sung in Thalassian. Elor Bindel, Morin Amanor, Lende Anu, Shuralaran. Sleep forever in quiet serenity. We bid you farewell. Thanks for being there for me, Norm. I'm sorry that life was not better and longer for you. I miss you. Whew, okay. Time to lift the mood here. After leaving Lion's Rest, I clicked that run walk button back to run, and we made our way up into the Mage Quarter and over to the western turret that overlooks Varian's tomb, but also the waterfront and the lighthouse and the ships coming in and out of Borealis, Borean Tundra, and the Waking Shores. This feels like the right place to pause and head into the final parts of this deep dive into my WoW family.
By the light, I could use another drink.
Truer words were never spoken, Captain Brewston. I, too, could, by the light, use another drink. And tonight, we're going to be drinking Netherguard bitters right from my uncle's bags, right? I figured it had to be something not too highbrow, because I remember my uncle drinking some pretty crappy beer, but yeah, we'll keep it kind of appropriate. So, another guard bitter in a toast to my Uncle Norm, to all our fallen friends, to Denethar's brother Dave, to all of those who we miss. Thanks for our time with you. We hope you are in a better place. And may we all cross paths yet again. Hear, hear. Okay, and with all those nice words said, there is a little gnome that has been getting quite antsy, having been skipped over in one episode, and she has something to say.
Thanks for your patience. How can I help you?
So even after all that babbling, it is Katie Stamp Whistle who is praising us for our patience. So she is the kindest, and you should definitely go get her toy so you can check your mail whenever you need to. And it is time for us to check our mailbag here at Solo Q. And frankly, there's a little bit of catching up to do, and I'm going to try and whip through this as quickly as I can. But months ago, I noticed on the app Castbox, which is a podcasting delivery app, there were 2 messages from about a year ago on the show left inside of the app, so essentially not outside of Castbox. One of them was advertising where to buy gold in Cata Classic. So, yeah. And the other one saying that she was a big fan of CTR. I thought the comment would kind of come around to Solo Q, but really it was only about CTR, Convert to Raid. Even though the show has not been a show for many years. So Castbox, not really my WoW family, apparently. But also a little while ago, I did find a way, and I honestly don't remember how I did this now, but I found a way to check out Apple Podcasts comments in other markets, in other countries. And it revealed that there was an old comment on the show from Apple Podcasts in Belgium. So Belgium, I'm sorry it took this long to to find you. It says, awesome show. I love this podcast. As a player who lingers between endgame content and solo playtime, I combine Dave's show with other weekly news podcasts. Though I don't listen to the solo queue for updates, Dave sometimes reminds me of a world event or some other thing I had forgotten to finish. Really enjoying the slow pace of the show and longevity. Keep up the great work. P.S. I hope you approve of my punctuation. Greetings from Belgium, Valtord. It might be Valtor as well. Valtor, this was many months ago. Thanks for the comment. I'm sorry it took us so long to find you. I think your punctuation is phenomenal. I think it is perfectly fine. You did leave an E out of Q in solo queue, though, so there you go. But, hey, thanks for reaching out. I appreciate your comments about the show, and I love that you're enjoying it for what it is. Yeah, not your weekly update. The next two are from America, Apple Podcasts, and one I honestly don't remember if I read before. It is from Case, and on Apple Podcasts, Casey1021. What a fun podcast about Warcraft. I love the narrative and information that Dave provides. Definitely worth a listen if you're into WoW. So Case, thanks for that. In October, got a message from Miliardo P. This show does a great job of celebrating those little bits of the game that keep you coming back, while also validating the feelings of the solo players out there. You feel like you're in Azeroth while you listen, and you discover that there's always more to learn about this world that we love. Miliardo, thank you for that. He called it therapy for this long-time WoW player. And boy, you know, it's a tough world. We'll take our therapy where we can get it. I think we all agree on that. We have a couple of comments on Spotify to catch up with. One, Rasta Goat from a couple months ago regarding episode 29. He mentioned, quote, the void mistress of podiatrical wonder, end quote, that had me rolling. Love the show. Keep it up. Thanks, Rasta Goat. I was really proud of that joke. And as I always say, if one person laughs at my jokes, I'm very satisfied. So I don't know if my catchphrase for Zalatas going to catch on, but I liked it. I'm glad you did. Scott Greeman writes in to say, wow, I'm a Spotify viewer that loves this for the record, because I think I mentioned, hey, are people listening on Spotify? And honestly, since then, Spotify numbers have gone up a bit. He says, I love this for the record. I love that you have music in the background. Agreed with the immersive vibe. Have you checked out Do Not Relent? Hilarious trio of guys that do actually get into the lore. I think they're great. I don't miss an episode. And actually, I have, since Scott wrote that in, I have checked out Do Not Relent. Every now and then I check in with those guys, and kind of like Lion's Pride Tavern growing on me. That said, how many podcasts can I listen to? So, yeah, I agree. They are a good listen, and definitely check out Do Not Relent. And a last comment on the old Spotify from J.H. Vicha. Sorry, Vicha? I'm going to go with Vicha. I don't know. Liked the content already. Then he starts talking about solo board gaming and The Longest Day. Went up in the ranking even more. Referring to the comments I made last episode about my favorite board game, The Longest Day. Yeah. And my comment to him was, yes, we need to hang out. Yeah. Referring to my comments about my board game, The Longest Day, in the last episode, and loving playing that. Thanks, JH, for reaching out about that. Glad you're enjoying the stuff. Somebody actually asked me if, when they heard I had a podcast, this person asked me if the podcast was about that game I used to play with that guy. meaning The Longest Day. And I thought, wow, that would be a very small audience, but a very fun podcast to make. So there you go. JH, you might be wishing for that podcast. Thanks to you guys for Spotify comments. On to the email, where you can reach me at SOLOQUEUEWOW@gmail.com. Raven wrote in, also in response to The Longest Day. He said, "Good day, sir. Hope you're feeling better. I was Googling The Longest Day after listening to the latest podcast and came across this photo on Board Game Geek. Figured you would appreciate it if you hadn't seen it already." I had not seen it. It is an image where someone has taken The Longest Day board game and attached it to a wall, first of all. So essentially a full wall. And even then, it actually had to peek up onto the ceiling. It literally bent around the corner onto the ceiling. But what is even more amazing is they somehow got the pieces attached as well. And I don't know if that's like glue or if, I don't know what's going on there. That was amazing. It made me want to find a way to put my game vertically, which no, that would be nigh impossible. Raven, thanks for sending that. I loved that. And yeah, I would like to geek out over some games. We'll chat soon. I got another email from Grandpa Pans Gaming. And I'll shorten it up a little bit. Been a WoW player for a long time, since Burning Crusade. Did lots of dungeons and raids during BC and Wrath. And then those groups started to fall apart around Kata. And he ended up playing more on his own. Enjoyed WoW up until Shadowlands. Took a break. Played some Final Fantasy XIV. Which has a system that has dungeons with AI characters. Go figure. When Dragonflight came out, he came back or was not committed to playing much until they announced Follower Dungeons. And he is back and instantly fell in love, back in love with WoW. 60 years old now. Story mode raids, follower dungeons, lore walking, all have embraced my style of gameplay. Finding your podcast has enhanced my enjoyment of WoW even more. Your take on the solo adventure has mirrored my own beliefs. You've provided additional insights and tips that have been so helpful. Thank you for the great job on the podcast. Thank you for introducing me to others in the WoW community through your interviews. Many of the contributors and content creators I would not have known without your introduction. Others, like the Lion's Pride Tavern, I've listened to for years. They are all within my age group, and I can understand their take on life and the game. When you first talked about it and then appeared on their show, it was so awesome. It was like two small parts of my life merged into a larger family experience. I could gush on your show for hours, but you get the idea. I am enjoying the family episode part 1. Looking forward to part 2. Here it comes, my friend. I had been waiting to write to you for a while, but this episode has given me the last little push to reach out and let you know you have one more set of ears listening and enjoying your show. Best regards. Thank you, Grandpa Pans Gaming. Grandpa Pans? See, I'm wondering, is it Grandpa Pans Gaming, as in he doesn't like it? Or do his grandkids call him Grandpa Pans? Because he's got pans for hands. Because that's the thing grandpas would do. And he games, so it's Grandpa Pans Gaming. I don't know. I'm going to have to find out. Grandpa Pans, let me know. I'm curious. Thank you all for checking in. It is so appreciated. I love to hear the feedback. Appreciate the feedback. And it is time. It is finally time to make our big announcement. And for that, we're going to go back to Winter Spring. So even though I spent many years in WoW before this podcast, playing all alone, ignoring everyone I could, I was building a family with the voices I listened to each week, each month, that I could eventually step into that family of podcasters and content creators is really proof that this type of family is open to anyone who chooses to put the effort in. And what might have seemed unthinkable a couple years ago turned out to not even be the big leap that I thought it might be when I started podcasting. Every few months, I made a connection with another content creator. Some felt a little one-off, others turned into ongoing conversations, and dare I say, friendships. None of them felt purely transactional or just for convenience, even the ones that I'm not keeping in touch with as closely. And on the playing side of things, some of these relationships have turned into players that I know and people in game that I can jump in and play with. And while it's not going to be my first choice, it's nice to know that it's there and that it is going to give me a chance to maybe see a little bit of content that I wouldn't otherwise, or see a few things in a different way, have some different experiences. It's nice to find some people who have a similar frame of mind, a casual but interested, even a solo but open to things kind of attitude. That's really nice. And so what I've learned is, yeah, there are ways to be a solo player with people around you. And the idea of playing solo together, being solo together, is something that I kind of had in mind right from the beginning. Well, now is the opportunity to take that one step further. And I don't know how this is going to work. I haven't decided on all the details. Frankly, I'm not terribly good at figuring out details ahead of time. I do them when I need to, when they come. So, the big announcement is this. I would like to start a housing community for solo players. I want there to be a solo together community. Maybe it's tied to a guild, maybe it's not. I think as we get a little bit closer and make that decision as to which way makes more sense, should we start a guild, a solo together guild with cross-faction guilds and cross-server guilds and all that stuff, that may make sense? Or does it make sense to make a private charter community and run the housing? No guild, just the housing of interested solo players. I'm not sure. And frankly, I'm open to feedback. I'm open to people who have any thoughts on this. I think it would be an alliance server. I think it would be an alliance. I'm going to have a house in each. I think I would be more active in my alliance house than my horde house, and therefore that sounds too much like whorehouse. Sorry, but I think it would rather it be the alliance side. Maybe I could be swayed. I don't know. If you've got thoughts, drop me a quick line. Let me know. Obviously, this is something that I want to do to please as many people as possible and involve as many people as possible and have you get something out of it. Certainly not just for my ego. I may have an ego, but I don't, this is not part of it. I think it would be really cool to bring people together who want to be there, and maybe we can make that happen. And housing seems like the right moment to try and do that. So that's the big announcement. Solo together, HOA, I don't know. We'll come up with a name for it or something. Bringing this all back to where the podcast started, in the quiet, empty zone of winter spring. Because, hey, after all of this group stuff that I've been telling you about, I still am who I am, and I need to get back to some alone time. There are lots of ways to try and find your people in game. And that might be the issue for you, finding your people. It's not easy. In life, where do you meet people after school, after college, when you hit adulthood? It's not always easy. It can be tough in game as well, especially if you are not a social risk taker. You know that there are groups out there, Dungeon Dojo, WoW Made Easy, those groups with their Discords and websites and what have you, those can be great opportunities to meet some like-minded people or at least do some low-stress group content. One suggestion I have for you, and it worked for me, check out some of the smaller streamers on Twitch. Casual Coup is, not Annie Fuchsia, but check out some of those. Some of those people are going to be more accessible because there's not 500 people screaming in the chat nonsense. Hop into a stream where you can actually engage with the streamer. That worked for me with Coup and Sanchin. And hey, if you really want to meet people, start a podcast. Why not? Winkari did it. The boys from Azeroth Morning Radio did it. You can do it too, I promise you. But it often comes back to being solo, and for me, that's certainly okay. It looks like, at long last, our time in the queue is up, at least for this big topic. I need to go finish my application to Mythic Raider Academy. I think I could probably land a spot with Method after my performance, right? Aren't they the ones that haven't won a Race to World First in a while? I think they could use me to take them to the top. What am I really doing? Gearing up for Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday, coming up in just a couple days. Gratitude runs quite free this month, so there's a lot of that on my mind. Also prepping for episode 33, which will feature an interview right on the heels of the launch of 11.2.7. So be ready for that. All I can say is it'll be our first three-way interview. All the music you hear is the work of the amazing people at Blizzard. Hashtag don't play muted. Come on. And the music bookending the show is by my friends in the doom metal band Ogre. I want to thank everyone who made this episode possible. My lovely and supportive wife, of course, my family. Special big thanks to my Aunt Connie for sharing her stories, sharing her account with me, and talking about her dear brother, Norm. Thank you to contributing Patreon supporters. Andrew Righteous Bandy, That Sky Guy. Yes, we will try and find a night this week to catch up. Sin, Snake of Oldoon, John, Scott, Jeru, Raven, thanks for that email. Graybeard, thanks for your email. Case, and welcome to Pasta Matt for joining the solo crew. Welcome, and thank you to all of you for the support. And thank you, of course, to free members, Max, Eddie, Bear, Friends of Wumpus, Sean, Kuro, Aaron R., Aiden Nakron, Guardian Sandy, Alice, Dawn, Camille. I promise I started researching it today. Wednesday, Eric, and TJ. Thank you for your support as well. Subscribe wherever. Come on, Apple, Spotify, all of those places. Just click subscribe so I can show up whenever I show up. I come in, I come out like an itinerant preacher. As always, if you can leave a rating or a review on Spotify or Apple, or, even click those likes on the YouTube, it helps the show, and I will read those things eventually when I get them. As I said, reach out on the email or the Blue Sky, the Twitter, a little less so on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. It is Pilgrim's Bounty time, in-game and in real life. I hope if you're gathering with friends and family, enjoy your time together. Enjoy your time together. I think that's one thing we'll take away from all of this. Thanks for listening to me share some stuff. We'll meet up soon to talk to a couple new friends next time we jump into the solo queue. I'll see you out there.